Hello everybody. Now I recently made a video about Skyrim Unmodded and I got quite a good response. It kind of rammed home that there's quite a lot of people out there playing Skyrim with no mods. So I thought I'd make a follow-up video. This is Unmodded versus Modded. Now the Unmodded game, they're at the mercy of Bethesda and their ability to fix bugs. Now the default game today, Skyrim, doesn't really have any major issues from the player's perspective. It has an awful lot of issues from the modder's perspective, but it doesn't have that many from a player's perspective. In my experience, it's already quite stable. I don't think you need any unofficial patches or anything like that. And the unofficial patches often makes changes that are a matter of opinion. You know, they're not really bugs, they're just opinions. Needs changing, in my opinion. So, I mean, I've looked down the list of fixes and I'm not really that impressed. It's not impressed me enough to want to ever install it, put it that way. So the default game is quite good. Also, I think the recent anniversary update has made some important changes that makes things a little bit better than it used to be. So, in a way, you kind of got an official mod for Skyrim with the anniversary edition. So the anniversary edition should deliver what most mod games would deliver anyway. It certainly feels different to me, and it's added a new dimension to the game that the default game never used to have when it was originally released. So there's quite a lot of improvements there. I still get to do all the things I like to do in it as well. I just don't get the kind of characters that I normally like to play. Like if I want to play a necromancer or something like that, I'd normally install my own mods to support it. Whilst you can do it, you don't get the same level of support as when you've got a mod there to back it up and make it more of a core gameplay option. So you've got the standard warrior, stealthy archer kind of gameplay though. They're all there. Mage gameplay is still there. So I guess it's not an issue really. It just narrows it down. Because, I mean, back in the day when the Oblivion came out, you basically had freedom to go in any direction you wanted because of the way the statistics worked, you know, your stats. But now, because it's perk related, you don't really get the same options. You've got to follow a tree, so you've got to commit to a tree. And sometimes you've got to go all the way up the tree to get the option you want instead of just selecting the perk when you get to that level. So there are limitations in Skyrim that didn't exist in previous games, and the default game doesn't give you any options to work around that. But if you're happy with that, then that's not an issue at all. That's great. The default game itself is also 100% law friendly. Everything in it was made by Bethesda and therefore is law. Whereas the modded game can make some changes that confuse a lot of people regarding what is law. I used to crack jokes back in the day when I was making my Kvatch mod. Right, when I found out that people were complaining about my mod not being law friendly, didn't actually know any law themselves. They were doing forum law, I call wishful thinking law. You know, I think Darth Vader should have a lightsaber in there, so that must be law. That kind of law. And in the end, I just started shooting them down, and eventually I gave up because I thought, I'm not arguing with idiots. But the thing is, the law itself is its original state in the default game. If you want to immerse yourself into the actual world properly, with no distractions, there's only one way to do it, and that is in the default game with no mods installed. Now, a lot of mods, when they are installed, change the game. Some of them claim to be law mods, so they get more downloads when they're not. You can do a quest mod where you can go to a cave and get a diamond. Nothing wrong with that. It's neither a law mod nor not a law mod. It's just a day-to-day routine in Skyrim. That fits. That's fine. Darth Vader with a lightsaber, not fine. So there is a difference. I tend to make mods based on books already in the game. So when you read about the elves and the humans conflicting between Morrowind and Skyrim, and I make a mod about the Dragonborn and rising to become Emperor at Return to Helgrim, then basically I'm playing on them books. Them books are the background to the mod, and they're the things that I follow. And I had quite a lot of lore detail to it in order to support and explain the books and just show you how the different stories are seen from different angles. Because if you're an elf, you'll see it one way. If you're a human, you'll see it another. So my mods will support the default gameplay, which is what I like. I don't like game mods that don't support the default gameplay, that don't fit or somehow add to something that I think shouldn't be there. Like Dwemer firearms. I don't really think they have a place in the game. So, but anyway, I think Dwemer horses, mate, though. You know, the actual mechanical horses, I think they do, because that's the kind of thing the Dwemer might make. So that works for me. But it's all down to opinion. What would fit with a game, what wouldn't fit with a game. This is the difference that that depending on your point of view, you know, says makes like there's a lot of people out there who got onto me about Kvatch not being law friendly, Kvatch Aftermath. So I made Kvatch Rising, which was law friendly, but people still liked Kvatch Aftermath. It wasn't particularly made to be a law mod, but it didn't break any law rules. People said it should have an arena, and I went, it did have an arena, but it burnt down, remember? Right, so, I mean, I live in a town that's heavily bombed by the Germans, and I can tell you for a fact, after the bombing, they never rebuilt all the buildings the same way as they did before, and I'm not seeing any other city that did either. So after a city's destroyed, by whatever means, they don't rebuild it exactly the same. That wouldn't be realistic, and I didn't either. I built it along new grounds, and that annoyed people. When I did Kvatch Rising, I made it a strict law mod. Nobody cared. Nobody cared when I made it a strict law mod. Kvatch Aftermath is still a mod everybody likes to play. I mean, don't get me wrong, Kvatch Rising is a work of art. Everything in it is law friendly. Every detail is taken from the books. Supports everything. Kvatch Aftermath doesn't. But Kvatch Aftermath is like a giant house mod. If you've got the Toasty Sears Share mod installed, then you can change the clothing on every NPC in the city, and it won't be lost after 3 days. So you can control everything, and I think that's what people like. But that's for Oblivion. That is for Oblivion. But anyhow, the difference between modded and unmodded games, though, if you install mods, then you'll end up in the community asking for help at some point because of the wide variety of mods out there and the quality of them, because it varies a great deal according to the modder's experience. I've seen modders who can make quest mods only make 2 because the 2 quest mods they made conflict with each other. That means they weren't really aware of how conflicts work. When I made my first mod, you know, for Oblivion, this Kvatch Aftermath, there were a few issues with how I designed it, but I learned from my mistakes and I improved in future mods. But I kept on making. In the end, I ended up with 32 quest mods that all work together with no conflicts. That's rare. That is very, very rare. I mean, you could download all my mods, install them, not have any worries. And I've removed all the ones that do cause issues due to changes over time and patches breaking things. So there's nothing left online that would cause you an issue. But that is rare, like I said. Usually there's so many mods by different people with different standards that you'll end up in a forum asking for help with your mod list, and usually that's the start of a nightmare because the advice they give out on the forums isn't the healthiest advice. They usually talk about bash patching and merging things and running mods that conflict together by changing the load order. My advice is if 2 mods conflict, pick one, dump the other. Don't try and force the issue because that conflict isn't going away. You might appear to get away with it, but you're not. Trust me, it stays in the game. This is why when people try running a fancy mod list, they end up months trying to stabilise it. Then they get angry with people, or especially mod makers, when they add a mod and their mod list collapses. It's never their fault, it's always somebody else's. And that's the cause of the frustration in the modding community when people are playing fancy mod lists and things start falling apart. Because these people aren't friendly on the forums, they're unfriendly, they're aggressive. And I think this is part of the thing that puts people off, you know, modding their games, because they're going to come across that kind of attitude. They're going to see that kind of trolling, and it's not a good thing. Sometimes it's better just to avoid mods completely and just play the unmodded game in order to avoid that particular scenario. And I certainly left the community because of that kind of thing. I don't read that community. I don't post in it anymore. If I make any mods, I don't advertise them over there anymore. I haven't done that since 2008, I think it is, maybe later. So we're talking like 15 years ago, and I've not missed it. So in a way, I'm pretty much like most of you unmodded types that are out there. You know, don't bother with the community, just play the game. I'm like that. Only I know which mods I want, and if I see a part of the game I don't like, I will change it myself. I will make the mod myself to make it better. I'm not tempted by anything I see or hear advertised on YouTube or mods that people claim, because there's always hidden issues, and some of these hidden issues are obvious because the modder just didn't have the experience to spot them. Some of them are not so obvious, and they only come up months later after you played a few games. But always remember though, just because the last mod installed revealed a problem doesn't mean it was the mod with the problem. Sometimes the first mod you install has the problem, and you only see the problem when another mod is installed that conflicts with it. At that point the problem is highlighted, because one mod will never conflict with anything, two mods can. So there you go. Anyway, so the Unmodded game itself is a work of art on its own right. Skyrim's level system is far better than Oblivion's. Oblivion's used to have this same kind of feeling about it, where you go from, all the NPCs would go from iron to steel to glass to whatever, and you see they just all change their armour all at the same time. Whereas the default game, where the modded game changed that, was one of the first things all the overhauls changed, was that, to make it a little bit more random. I certainly made an overhaul to make it more random. So that was one of the big improvements of the default game in Oblivion. It's very similar in a way in Skyrim. So if you were to install anything onto an unmodded game, an overhaul that changed the armour so it's more random would be the first thing I picked and installed. It would conflict with anything that also changed the armour, but in my experience you only need one good mod that does that, and then you can ignore the rest, and it just randomizes things a little bit, so you can come across all kinds of things. It stops the game feeling the same. If you're on the PS4, I think it is, or PS5, and you've not got access to those kind of mods, then obviously it's not an option. But if you can make a change, that would be the one change I would make. Everything else, it's just eye candy really. Besides, the Anniversary Edition has made some huge changes to the game, and I think that should be enough for most people that aren't that interested in mods in the first place. Because like I said, not all modders are the same. Some modders are better than others, and you do take a bit of a lucky dip when you're actually trying to install mods, because you could have a lot of problems and not even know how to solve them. And it's very frustrating not being able to play your favourite game because mods, are stopping you from playing it due to crashing. Anyway, that's my take on modded versus unmodded. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave your comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.